The day a man finally understands he is running out of time is the day he is handed the greatest gift of his whole life. And almost nobody has the courage to open it. Instead, we spend our best years running away from that one truth, filling every hour with noise and errands, so that we never once have to sit still and feel the sand moving through our fingers. I'm going to tell you something it took me 50 years and a workbench full of other men's clocks to finally understand. Running out of time is not the curse you have been so afraid of. It is the only reason your time was ever worth anything at all. My name is Henry. I am 75 years old, and I have mended clocks and watches for half a century, in the same narrow shop on the corner that my father kept before me. My whole working life I have been in the business of giving people back their time. A watch gone dead on a wrist, a clock fallen silent on a mantel, and I open the back of it and I set the hours running again for them. And the sorry joke of my life, the one I can smile at now, is that I handed this whole town its time back, hour after hour, year upon year, and never once stopped to count my own. Sit with me a while, and let me tell you what an old man finally learned about the sand. When we are young, we live as though the jar has no bottom to it. We say the word someday as though it were a real place we are all guaranteed to arrive at. We say there is plenty of time yet. We will get to it. We will make it right. We will slow down and start really living just as soon as this one busy season finally passes. And all the while, we are spending the single most precious thing we will ever hold in our hands as if there were an endless supply of it stacked in the back room. I did it worse than most men. I looked up from my bench one ordinary afternoon, and 30 years had run through my hands like water through a cloth, and I could not have told you where a single one of them had gone. Now, here is what a lifetime at this trade taught me, and I need you to truly hear it, not just nod at it. A clock is not eternal. A wound mainspring holds only so many turns. A watch has only so many ticks left in it before it winds down to stillness. And every honest clockmaker knows the little machine is running toward its end from the very moment you set it going. And for years, that truth used to sadden me at the bench. Then one gray afternoon, with a customer's watch lying open under my glass, the whole thing turned itself over in my mind. The shortness is not the tragedy. The shortness is the entire reason the thing is precious. A jar of sand with no bottom is worth nothing at all. You would let it pour out onto the floor and never once look down. It is precisely because the grains are counted that a single one of them is worth catching. There was a man who came into my shop for years, and I will call him Warren. Healthy as a horse, always in a hurry, always saying the very same thing to me over the counter. "When I retire," he would say, "when things finally settle down, when there is time, then I will get around to the living." He brought me his own father's watch once and asked me to hold off on the repair. No rush. He would see to it someday. Then Warren got the kind of news that stops a man dead in the middle of the street. A few months, they told him. Perhaps a little more than that. And I braced myself the next time the bell over my door rang for him, expecting to meet a broken man. But Warren was not broken. He was awake. He told me he had seen more of his own wife's face in the last 2 months than in the 20 busy years before them. He said, "Henry, here is the strangest thing of it. I am not so much dying as I have finally started paying attention." He had spent a whole healthy life more than half asleep, and it took the sand very nearly running out to wake the man up. And near the end, he told me his only true regret was that he had waited for the jar to empty before he ever learned to treasure what was in it. So let me tell you what happens to a man when he finally lets that truth all the way in. When he stops pretending to himself that the sand is endless. When you know your time is short, you quietly stop handing your good hours to people who only ever drained them, and you feel not 1 ounce of guilt about it. When you know your time is short, you say yes to the slow afternoon with the grandchild, and no to the meeting that will not matter by the first snow. When you know your time is short, you forgive the old grudge, not because the other fellow ever earned it, but because you have counted your days, and you will not spend 1 more of them carrying a stone uphill. When you know your time is short, you stop rehearsing the conversation in your head, and you simply pick up the telephone while the line still rings on both ends. When you know your time is short, you stop performing for people whose opinion you will not even remember by spring, and you start saying the plain, true thing instead of the careful, polished one. And when you know your time is short, you learn the hardest, small skill there is, which is to sit in an ordinary evening and let it be enough, without reaching past it for the next thing. And none of that is grim, not 1 bit of it. Every piece of it is a man at last spending his life as though it were worth something, because he has finally understood, down in his chest, that it always was.
I know this is true because it happened to me at that very bench. There came a morning when I understood in my body, and not only in my head, how few good years were likely left on my own dial. And instead of frightening me the way I always feared it would, it did something I never expected. It made me generous with the little that remained. I began closing the shop early. My daughter Ruth, who grew up on a small stool in the corner, watching the back of her father's bent head, has her father now in a way that little girl never once did. My granddaughter Emma sits beside me most afternoons, and I bring her nothing at all but every last minute of my attention. I cannot give any of them back the years I already poured out onto other men's watches. Those grains are gone, and no clockmaker alive can put a grain of sand back into the top of the glass. But the very shortness of what is left is the thing that finally taught me to stop wasting it. And there is a strange, quiet mercy in that. The lesson still arrives, even when it arrives late. Even a man down to his last handful of sand can decide today to hold each grain as though it were the treasure it always was. Now, I owe you a piece of honesty, because there is a trap waiting on the far side of all this, and I have fallen into it myself more than once. You can count the grains so anxiously that you never actually taste a single day. There have been whole mornings I have thrown away, worrying over just how many mornings I might have left, which is its own foolish way of pouring them out on the floor. The gift was never meant to be the fear of the end. A man ruled by the dread of running out is no more awake than the man who pretends he never will. The gift is letting the shortness make the plain, ordinary hour feel heavy and sweet in your hands. Not to dread the empty jar, but to hold each grain just long enough to feel its true weight, before you let it go on through. I have no wisdom to hand you across this old counter. I have a loop, a bench, and 50 years of other people's hours running steadily through my fingers. But I have come to believe we were each handed a clock with a finite number of ticks in it for one single reason, so that we would spend them like they mattered. There is a clock on the wall above my bench that is near 90 years old, older than I am, and every night before the light goes out, I reach up and wind it, and listen for it to go on ticking there in the dark, knowing full well that one day, mine or long after mine, it will tick its very last. And that is not a sad thing. That is the whole reason tonight's winding is worth the doing. You are not running out of something cheap and common. You are running out of the single most precious thing there is, and that, and nothing else, is exactly why you must stop today and start spending it on what you will be glad at the end that you spent it on. If any of this found its way to you, if you have been living as though your own jar had no bottom, then do an old watchmaker one small kindness and stay a while here with me. I put one of these talks out every week, the things I dearly wish somebody had said to me back when I still believed I had all the time in the world. If you would like the next one to reach you, go on and subscribe. And if that is more than you have in you today, then just leave a like before you go, so that I know these words landed on somebody out there in the quiet. Either way, do not wait for the sand to teach you the hard way by running out. Go and spend one good hour today on what truly matters. And I will see you on the next one.